The notification came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night, and I almost didn't open it. I was sitting in the parking garage of my office building, eating a sad desk salad in my car, because I'd worked through lunch again, when my phone lit up with a bank alert. Low balance warning on my savings account. I figured it was a glitch. That account had a healthy buffer, the money I'd been saving since I was 22, the fund I never touched. I opened the app to dismiss it. The balance was $214. I sat there in the dark for so long that the parking garage lights timed out around me. 14 months of automatic transfers, each one just under $300, labeled with the same 3 words: Family Medical Fund. I scrolled back through them the way you reread a text that doesn't make sense, hoping the meaning will change if you look long enough. It didn't change. 31 transfers. Almost $9,000, moved out of an account only 2 people in the world even knew I had, me and my mother. I called her before I got home. It rang twice, then went to voicemail. She called back at 7 a.m. like nothing was wrong. "You went into my savings account," I said. No greeting, no warm-up. I had rehearsed it in my head all night. She paused just long enough to tell me she knew exactly what I was calling about. Then she said, "Your brother needed it, sweetheart. You know how things have been for him." I knew how things had been. My younger brother was 30 years old and hadn't held a job longer than 4 months since college. My mother had been covering for him quietly for years, a car payment here, a utility bill there, and I had looked the other way because I loved her and because making peace was easier than making noise. But this was different. This wasn't her money. This was mine. "You didn't ask me," I said. "You would have said no." She didn't sound ashamed. That's what I keep coming back to. She said it like it was a reasonable explanation. Like the fact that I would have refused was proof she'd been right to go around me. I hung up. I sat down on my kitchen floor, still in my coat, and stared at the wall. Here is what she didn't know. That account wasn't just a savings fund. 18 months earlier, when my grandmother passed away, she had left me a small inheritance with a specific instruction attached. It was in the letter she wrote, the one the attorney read to me privately, the one I had never shared with my mother, because my grandmother had told me not to. The money was meant for a purpose. I had already started the process. And my mother had just quietly drained the account that held it, a little at a time, for over a year. While I deposited my paychecks every 2 weeks and watched the number grow without ever checking the breakdown, she didn't know what she had actually taken from me. She just knew I had money, and my brother needed it, and that was enough of a reason. I called my attorney, a woman named Vera, who had handled my grandmother's estate, who had become something closer to an advisor in the months since. I told her what I'd found. There was a silence on the line that felt deliberate, the kind that means someone is choosing their words carefully. "Don't talk to her again today," Vera said. "Not today, not tomorrow. Forward me everything from the bank." I wanted to ask if she thought I had a case. I wanted her to tell me what to do next. Instead, she just said, quietly but firmly, "Ava would have been very upset. She meant my grandmother. She used her name like a reminder. I needed it. My mother's name is not in this story because she doesn't deserve the space. I'll call her what she is. My mother. My brother is my brother." Those titles are the most honest things I can give them. What happened next unfolded slowly at first, and then all at once. Vera pulled the estate records. My grandmother's letter had been filed and notarized. It wasn't a legal binding document in the traditional sense, but it established intent clearly. The inheritance was meant for a specific, documented purpose. A down payment on a property in the town where my grandmother had grown up, a place she'd always hoped one of us would put down roots. She had written it out in her careful handwriting. She had signed it. The attorney had witnessed it. My mother knew about the inheritance. She had been in the room when the estate was discussed, though she hadn't been given the letter. She would have known the general amount. She would have assumed, because she always assumed, that what was mine was available to her family if she decided the need was great enough. What she hadn't counted on was the paper trail. Vera traced the transfers back, using the bank's internal records. Every single one had been initiated from a shared access point. A joint login my mother had retained from years ago, when I was 23 and she had co-signed my first checking account. I had never removed her access because it had never occurred to me that I needed to. She had watched me open the savings account. She had the credentials. She had waited until the balance was worth taking, And then she had taken it, slowly and carefully, in amounts designed not to trigger automatic alerts. This was not a moment of desperation, this was a plan. I didn't cry when Vera told me. I had already done the crying, alone on my kitchen floor the night before. What I felt instead was something colder and stranger, like the floor beneath something I'd always stood on had finally given way, and I was looking down at the drop. My mother called 3 more times that week. I didn't answer. My brother texted once. It just said, "You need to calm down." I didn't respond. What I did instead was go through everything. Every account, every document, every record I had been too trusting to check before. And when I opened the folder on my laptop where I kept my grandmother's paperwork, I found something I hadn't thought about in months. The letter itself, scanned and saved, my grandmother's handwriting preserved in a PDF I could open at 2 a.m. in a too-quiet apartment. She wrote to me like she knew I would need it someday. She wrote, "You are the one in this family who carries things quietly. I need you to know that I see that, and I want you to stop." I read it 4 times, then I forwarded it to Vera. By the end of that week, Vera had filed a formal complaint with the bank regarding unauthorized access to my account. She had drafted a demand letter to my mother outlining the transfers, the amounts, the timeline, and the legal exposure. She had also discovered something I hadn't known. My brother, who supposedly needed the money, had made a down payment on a truck 2 months after the transfers started. Not a cheap truck, a new one. The medical fund label on those transfers was a lie. There had been no medical need. There wasn't even a pretense of one. My mother had just used language she knew I wouldn't question, attached it to money she knew I wasn't monitoring closely, and moved it. When the demand letter was sent, everything changed. My mother called from a number I didn't recognize, which told me she knew I was ignoring her. "I let it go to voicemail," she said, "and I have it saved. I will always have it saved. You are destroying this family over money. I raised you better than this. Your brother is struggling, and you are choosing lawyers over your own blood. I am ashamed of you." I listened to it twice. I sent it to Vera. My brother left a voicemail too, longer and louder, saying that I was selfish, that I had always thought I was better than him, that I was weaponizing my grandmother's death to punish the family for not living up to my standards. He said he needed that money. He said I had enough. He said, and this is the part I keep returning to, "You weren't even using it, like that was a reason. Like the fact that I wasn't spending it fast enough made it available for someone else to spend." I didn't respond to either of them. Vera had told me not to, and for once in my life, I actually listened. I had spent 30 years learning to keep the peace in my family by absorbing whatever they needed from me. I was done absorbing. The bank investigation took 2 weeks. At the end of it, they confirmed that the access had been unauthorized. My mother had been removed as an authorized user on that account years prior, after I changed banks, and the login she'd retained shouldn't have worked. There was a systems oversight on the bank's end which they acknowledged, and that acknowledgement mattered because it meant there was a second avenue of accountability. Vera was efficient and thorough in a way that made me feel, for the first time, like someone was genuinely in my corner. She walked me through what we had. $9,000 in unauthorized transfers, documented intent for the original inheritance, a false label applied to cover the withdrawals, and evidence that the money had been used to benefit my brother, not for any genuine emergency. "We can go civil," she said, during the meeting where she laid it all out. "Or we can refer this for criminal review. Unauthorized account access, potential elder financial exploitation by proxy, depending on how your grandmother's letter is categorized." I looked at her across the conference table. "What would you do?" She didn't answer right away. She folded her hands on the table and looked at me with an expression that was almost kind. "I'd think about what outcome would let you sleep at night. I thought about my grandmother's handwriting. I thought about you are the one who carries things quietly and I need you to stop. I thought about the truck my brother bought. I thought about my mother's voicemail. I am ashamed of you," delivered with such easy certainty, as though shame were a weapon she could just pick up and throw whenever it was useful. "Both," I said, "we go both routes." What came next was not a dramatic courtroom scene, it was paper, so much paper. Requests and responses and filings and counter-responses and a mediation session that my mother attended with an expression of performative grief that might have worked on me once, a long time ago, when I still believed that her pain was always genuine and always my responsibility to fix. She came into the mediation room with red eyes. She had brought my aunt, her sister who had always been her witness, her backup, her second voice in any argument with me. I had brought Vera, who set her legal pad on the table with a quiet precision that made my mother's attorney shift in his seat. My mother started crying before anyone had said a formal word. She talked about how hard things had been, how my brother was struggling, how the family had been stretched so thin for so long, how she hadn't meant to do anything wrong, how she'd thought I would want to help if I just understood the full picture. Vera let her finish. Then she opened the folder and placed the bank records on the table, one page at a time. The crying stopped. My aunt started to say something. Vera said, "I'm not finished," in a tone that made my aunt close her mouth. The letter from my grandmother was the last thing Vera put on the table. She had printed it in the original font, the scanned handwriting visible on every page. She placed it gently, like it was something worth treating carefully. Which it was. My mother looked at it for a long moment, then she looked at me. "She told you not to tell me about that," she said. "Yes," I said. I watched her understand slowly that my grandmother had anticipated this, that my grandmother had known or suspected or feared, and had left instructions accordingly, that the woman my mother had spent years dismissing as sentimental had been quietly precise where it mattered. Her attorney leaned over and said something quietly in her ear. She nodded once, a small sharp motion. They settled 2 days later, the full amount plus interest, restitution for legal fees, and a structured agreement that closed my mother's access to every financial account or record connected to my name. She did not apologize, not in writing, not in person. Her attorney framed the settlement as a resolution without admission, which is legal language, for we did it but we won't say so. I signed the papers on a Thursday afternoon. Vera's office had a window that looked out over the street below, and when it was done she offered me coffee, and I sat there for a few minutes just watching the traffic, not thinking about anything in particular. Just existing in a room where someone had been on my side. My brother texted me that night. One sentence, "I hope you're happy." I didn't respond, but I thought about it, whether I was happy. Whether that was even the right word for what I felt. It wasn't happiness exactly, it was something quieter. The specific relief of having finally told the truth, about something that had been weighing on me for so long I'd stopped noticing the weight. Here's what I want to say, because I think about this a lot now. The money mattered. $9,000 is not nothing, especially not when it came from someone who loved me and had a purpose for it and trusted me to carry that purpose forward. But the thing that mattered more, the thing I had to fight for because I hadn't known I needed to fight for it, was the right to say no and have it mean something. The right to own a thing and not have it quietly redistributed the moment someone decided my needs counted for less than someone else's. My mother had spent years training me to believe that my discomfort was selfishness, and my limits were failures, and my reluctance to give was proof of some flaw in my character. It worked for a long time. I carried things quietly, the way my grandmother said. I smoothed things over. I wrote the check, I made the call, I showed up, I tried not to need too much back, and it turns out that patience has a cost. It turns out that when you make it easy for people to take from you, some of them will never stop. I moved the money into a new account when it was returned. One that my mother's name has never been connected to, that exists in a system with no shared history, no old passwords, no threads leading back to her. I used it for exactly what my grandmother intended. The property is small, a 2-bedroom house in a town that still has a main street and a diner that's been open since 1971. It needs work. The floors creak and the kitchen is stuck in a decade I wasn't alive for, and the backyard has gone to seed in a way that will take years to undo. But the title has one name on it: mine. I went there for the first time on a Saturday in October, when the leaves were already coming down, and I stood in the backyard with a cup of gas station coffee and looked at the house my grandmother had wanted one of us to have. I thought about her handwriting. I thought about stop carrying things quietly. I thought about the mediation table and my mother's face when she understood what the letter meant. Then I finished my coffee and went inside, and started making a list of what needed fixing first. My family has not reached out since the settlement. I don't know if that's permanent or temporary. I've stopped trying to predict them. What I know is this: I sleep better now. Not because everything is resolved. Some things aren't resolvable, but because I stopped pretending I could fix people who weren't interested in being fixed, And I started spending that energy on something that could actually hold me. The house holds me. It's enough.